You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty. There is a sense of empowerment with that. It's when it's up to you to decide what works for you. And that could be for anything. We all have opportunities to be much kinder with ourselves, especially as we explore what's not working in our lives, what we want to be different, and what we want to put our energy towards creating change in, right? Hello there, and thank you so much for joining me today for a new episode of the A Bit From Within podcast. My name is Felicia, for those of you who are new to this podcast, and each week I come just to share a little bit of my heart, a little bit of something that I know to be true today, that I've felt, and hopefully it resonates with you or encourages you, especially in terms of just keeping that light alive within you. And I think sometimes having that positive voice in your ear that says, hey, everything's going to be okay. Hey, these are some things that are working for me. Or hey, these are some things that I'm struggling with. Sometimes that can make a huge difference for us. So that's what I'm here to do. And this week, we're going to be talking a little bit about why it is so important to stop being so hard on ourselves. We're going to be talking a little bit about finding systems that actually work for you. And then we're also going to be talking about, for our astrology segment, we're going to be talking a little bit about this waxing moon part of the lunar cycle that we're in, being in this Aries season, and then why this is such a fun an awesome time to manifest. And we might as well just start there, because I know that so many of you, like me, are kind of looking out your windows right now and seeing signs of spring. In fact, I just changed out my wreath from a more wintry wreath to a spring wreath and put our patio cushions out on the patio. I did do that knowing that I might regret that in a couple weeks or within the next couple weeks, but I did it anyway. And I just noticed this bush that's outside of our back door that is starting to have baby leaves on it. And they're that bright yellow color that's oh, I'm coming into the world again. And I think there's this feeling right now, this momentum underneath us that's new life is beginning. And that always, I think, naturally gives us this spark of energy that resonates with that part of us that is ready to really get going and to feel longer days and laughter and adventure and joyful moments and just being outside and all of the beautiful things that you connect with the warmer weather and the longer days. I know I cannot wait. Summer is my favorite time, and I am just a water baby. So I love to be near the pool as much as I can in the summer. It's kind of a retreat place for me. And so I cannot wait until our community pool opens up and I can spend some more time outside. And we are coming right off of this Aries new moon. It was on late Thursday night into Friday, April 1st. And so we're starting this month with a lot of new moon energy. In fact, we've kind of been on this kick for the last couple months because the new moons have been within the first 1 or 2 days of the month. And that kind of sets this tone for the entire month ahead. It's much harder. Last year, I feel like we were dealing with a lot more where the new moon would come in the middle of the month. And then it's I'll have this natural thing around oh, it's a new month, so I'm going to start these new goals, or it's a new week, so I'm going to start these new goals. And really, I think that if you can kind of work with the lunar cycle, good things happen, because there's this natural momentum shift kind of energy behind getting things started and having the motivation and having the energy and putting the effort in, and then kind of that builds up towards the full moon. And so anyway, all of that is just to say it's been really nice to have it actually sync up. First day of April, new moon energy, first full week of April, and we're still building this right now. And I really think this is a beautiful time to manifest for a couple different reasons. One, Aries is a cardinal sign. Cardinal signs are all about initiation, creativity, seeing the vision, leadership, going for it. So there's a lot of good starting thing energy happening with Aries in general. Also, Aries is the only cardinal sign that's a fire sign. So it is time to think of like the spark of creativity, like lighting a fire on your goals right now, like really starting things. All of that vibe is here for you right now. And then second of all, there's a planetary conjunction that's happening that is also really going to help us manifest things right now, but especially our dreams and our connection with our spiritual selves, and that part of ourself that maybe you're really wanting to tune more deeply inward right now. You're wanting to connect with your intuition. This is such a beautiful time to do that, specifically because of this planetary conjunction. And what that means is that two planets are kind of lining up in their orbit, and that happens to be in a zodiac sign. So it means that they're on the same page. And those two planets, in case you're curious, are Jupiter and Neptune, and they're meeting in Pisces. And this is extra cool because they actually only meet in the same sign every 166 years. So they do link up every 13 years, but those are in different signs. So it's been 166 years since both of these signs have been together in Pisces. So obviously they kind of move around the sun at different rates. So Jupiter is going to take off and keep going much faster than Neptune does. But for right now, Jupiter's kind of approaching and it's about to line up with Neptune. That'll happen on April 12th. And then Jupiter's going to keep going. Well, they both keep going, but you know what I mean. So this is just a beautiful time to really be thinking about, I would say, more of the themes of what Jupiter and Neptune are like. And because they're ruled by Pisces, there's a lot of similarities into their own symbolism and then also what they share with Pisces. So we're thinking, like I mentioned, kind of like intuition, deep emotions, imagination, your dreams. And then Jupiter, of course, is also this planet of like luck and expansion and generosity and balance and wealth and all of these. It's kind of like the good luck planet. So if you think of those two coming together and you think of what I was mentioning from Neptune as like the dreams and the mysticism and the transformation, this is a great time for you to transform, to bring that sense of optimism or expansion into your dreams, into your emotions, into your perceptions. And a beautiful time just to connect to your own strength too, and kind of just reconnect with those pieces of yourself. And I will say I have a whole section on this in this month's self-care guide, so you can download this right from my website. If you go in, you can see a place to download it right away. And the other thing that's kind of cool that's also in the self-care guide that you might want to consider checking out right now is I have this new moon ritual. You don't have to start it on the new moon. This one is called 12 Days to Manifest Abundance. And it is kind of like day one is like your big day where you're going to be kind of setting the tone for what you're trying to create and what you're working towards. And then days 2 through 12 are shorter, like 5 to 10 minutes you could spend just meditating, writing, journaling, reflecting on a different prompt that I've kind of laid out for you. So even though it's called a new moon ritual, you can really do this at any time, and you could really have fun doing this around this Jupiter Neptune conjunction to maybe bring some more expansion into your own life. And I'm thinking specifically of prosperity. That's probably because that's what I'm working on right now. That is something that I've been really focused on. If you listened to my episode last week, I was talking a lot about, are you open to receive? And I've just been taking this hard look at my own self and realizing that there's been a part of me that's been very closed off to receiving because I've been in a deep place of fear, especially financially. And I do have to share this story with you because last week, after sharing all this stuff about being open to receive, I realized I'm like, it is so time to do a wealth, prosperity, like money meditation specifically for the Patreon members. I was like, I know I'm needing it. we've got all of this kind of fiery get stuff started. If we've got the abundance ritual in the self-care guide, like this will be a perfect companion. And so I created this prosperity meditation. It's 18 minutes long. It's actually available on my website. If you're not a Patreon member, you can download it as like a standalone meditation. And it, of course, I'm a little biased. I understand that, but I'm like, yeah, it's a great meditation. But I will say that, so I recorded it, I put it all up, I got it all out there. And whenever I'm recording the guided meditations, I'm also practicing them myself. And I like to use a lot of visualization techniques inside of guided meditations. It's just kind of how I work. And of course, you don't have to work that way to also benefit from them. Like they're your meditation. You can take it however you want. But we really focused on like bringing in different channels of prosperity, visualizing it, opening up your heart, understanding that, it might not happen immediately, but that you are just connecting yourself to that. You're elevating your mood and your attitude around money and prosperity and receiving and openness. So I felt that. And you always wonder, like, is it going to work? Like, am I going to manifest this? How is this going to happen? I try to stay out of that place, but I think it's natural for all of us when we're talking about manifestation to wonder, is this going to work? Or is it working? And so the day went on, and of course I was feeling just in a much better place. And we go to check the mail, and of course I'm like, oh no, here comes the next hospital bill, because Dave's been in and out of hospitals this year, and I've got some like hospital bill PTSD from last year, especially when our insurance was not as good as it now is, that Dave's working a good job with a good company. And so we opened the hospital bill, and I don't even know how it happened, but between our insurance and a financial aid program that we had to enroll in, we got our bill, and it was reduced from $8,000 to $153. And I was expecting it to be in the thousands. So just that big of a jump, it immediately like lit up my heart. And it made me feel like, oh my gosh, like this is a part of it. Like sometimes when you're trying to manifest more prosperity into your life, it is not just about money coming in. Like, I feel like anytime you listen to like law of attraction stuff around money, you always hear these stories about like, oh yeah, I really, saw myself attracting money, and then I got a $5,000 check in the mail. And that's great. Like, I've heard stories about people just like banks messing up and depositing money into their account. I have never experienced anything like that. And I'll tell you, universe, I am open to that if you want to take that route, but I will also a million times accept like something like a reduced bill, or my loan burden being lessened, or things like that. Like that is absolutely another way that the universe can take care of you and support you in your prosperity. And that just felt so good. And I feel like it kind of continued to roll and continue, because last week I was paying our taxes, and I am very big on this. I've always been big on this, but I definitely tend to lean more into it when I'm the most scared. And after this last tax season, I was feeling like a little bit, I'll just be honest. Like I was feeling a little bit scared about having to pay such large amounts of money for me right now. And I've always done this, where whenever I'm writing a check, I just think there's more where that came from. And I try to, as I write that check, as I submit the payment, as I mail it out, I just think of just this cycle of money. Like money is meant to be exchanged. So I just think, okay, this is going out, and then I'm just visualizing money coming back in, whether that is clients booking certain things or whatever else. Like just money goes out, money comes in, money goes out, money comes in. And I try to really take down my own emotions around it, around like fear of loss or fear of not having enough, like all of those, I guess, root chakra issues where it's connected to our survival instincts, and just really think, I'm always going to have enough. Everything's going to be fine. I'm in the flow. And that helps. And sure enough, like, I won't say that I manifested the amount that I had to pay, but I feel like I noticed an uptick in money coming back in. And it just felt good. It felt reaffirming. And I am so grateful for that. And I'm grateful for practices like meditation and being mindful and mindfulness. Like, I'm not telling you, go out and buy my meditation and it'll change your money life. I'm not going to do that. I think you can do it right now. You don't need somebody to guide you and tell you how to do it. Although, do I think that's a supportive tool? Do I think a lot of people would probably resonate with somebody that they vibe with and trust and who wants to hold space for them and help them walk through it? I think that's a great idea too, but I don't think you need that. I think you can do it yourself. You can always be more mindful of where your thoughts are and how you're approaching things, how you're thinking of things. And if you are not liking what you're thinking, if it's not serving you, you can pause and you can redirect yourself. And I think that is such an important tool. And so, yes, if you are wanting some of this stuff, if you want to check out the meditation, or if you want to try the 12 Days to Abundance ritual, like I said, that one is free in the self-care guide. You can get it from my website, or Patreon members, it's already in your inbox. And, honestly, one thing I love about the rituals that are included in my books and things like that, and my guides, they're really like self-development exercises. And I love to call them rituals because a ritual means that something is sacred. You're going to go about doing something a similar way. You're going to do it with reverence. You're going to do it with deep intention. And I believe that that's how self-care work and self-development work should happen. Like, you should have that air of sacredness to it, that feeling that you're devoting yourself to this growth. You're carving out this sacred time for you. And so you can do that a lot of different ways, right? Like, some of us are going to do that very simply. Like, we're going to have one special journal, and we're going to go to that one little spot in our kitchen that we just feel like we can cozy up with a cup of tea, and that's it. And there's others of us that have like a whole room dedicated to all of our items that make us feel so good. Maybe we've got some crystals in there. Maybe we've got some candles. Maybe we've got our yoga mat out. We've got this whole, setup. That's fine too. Like, there's not one way to do it. And you don't have to look at how somebody else does it or somebody else's definition of like what's spiritual and make that your own. Like, you get to decide what works for you, not only in rituals, but in every area of your life. And this is just a perfect segue to something that's been on my heart a lot lately, which is you have to find a system that works for you. And yeah, you can try other people's systems, but like, ultimately you're going to be tweaking them to fit your needs. And this is true with what I'm talking about with the rituals. Like I said, you can make it really fancy. You can make it really simple. You need to make it work for you. Also, like, even with the instructions of the ritual, right? Like, I have this 12 days to manifest abundance ritual. Do you have to do it in 12 days? No. Could you start day 1 right now and then do days 2, 3, 4 and then pick up? Yeah, you totally could do that. Could you sit down in one go and go through all of the prompts? Yeah, you can do that too. You can do whatever you have the bandwidth for. In fact, you could turn it into 12 months of manifesting abundance and do one topic for each month, right? Like, especially with something like this, like, there is nobody, you're not in a class. Nobody's saying, hey, you have to get this done in this way and do it like this. And I think sometimes we forget that. Maybe it's because we spent so much of our lives in school and following rules and, at our jobs, we have certain ways of doing things. But in our lives, we have the ability to be a lot more free than we allow ourselves to be. We're constantly shoulding on ourselves. We're constantly saying, I should be doing this. It should look like that. This is how I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to do that. This is the right way to do something. And it takes a little bit of courage, but looking at yourself and saying, what pieces of that are actually true? And where do I have more freedom? And do I need that freedom right now? So a totally different example, like not talking about rituals, but this exact same thing. I was talking with my mom about this over the weekend because for the longest time, we've been talking about doing some organization for her with her systems in her own office area. And of course, her systems have been carefully created over many, many years. And I understand this because now that I'm a woman in my 30s with a house of my own, I have systems that work for me that tend to adapt over the years. In fact, I can think of it for myself personally. When I first got my own apartment, I didn't have like a lot of stuff, right? Like I didn't have a lot of paperwork. I didn't have a lot of car documents. I didn't have a lot of lease documents. I didn't have all of that. And I remember when I first got a copy of my lease, I was like, okay, where am I going to put that? Like, what do I need to keep this? What do I need? Of course I need to keep it. Okay. So I just put it in a little folder, and I put that folder, I think I just put it in like a drawer, like a desk drawer or something like that. And then slowly it was like, oh, now I have this, now I have this. And then I was like, okay, now I'm to this place where like I need an accordion folder where I need to put all of these adulting documents in. And then my business started, and then there were a bunch of contracts, and then I had binders of different things, and then, okay, and so on and so forth, and it goes on and on and on. And now I have a system in my life where I have like a little thing in my desk where I can like file stuff. It's not like a filing cabinet or anything. It's like like an office organizer, like, or has like a little pen holder and then like some slots. And I just literally like throughout the year, I just put stuff there. I'm like, okay, that's important. Okay, I'm going to need that, or that needs to get filed, or I can't throw that away. And I just put stuff there, and then it starts to get crazy. And then about once a year, I have time where I just go through it and I throw stuff away or shred stuff that I need to, or file things away and put things where they belong. And that works for me. And so over the weekend, I was helping my mom organize all of this stuff, and we were going through years and years and years of, documents and things gathered and whatnot. And I was joking with her a little bit that I'm like, you're lucky that it's me, the daughter, who's helping you with this, because my sister, her other daughter, would not be so nice about like what she's allowed to keep or not. And even, it's funny because even when I was talking to my sister about this, she was like, like I would be like, you're getting rid of this stuff. I'm like, I told her, I'm like, that's not really your thing to decide. Right? Like, I think and granted, this is like a common dynamic between like kids and parents, right? Where it's like, you need to do this, or, but like, this is my way of doing it. And the kids have these new ideas and they're more hip, or they know things, or more technological or whatever. They're like, well, just do it like this. And then maybe the older generation's like, but I've never done it that way, and I'm not sure if that would even work for me. And so I try to kind of be in this middle place around, like with my mom specifically, around, you don't have to do anything. You have to pick something that works for you. And if you want to minimize your paper burden and you want to be more organized, then what does that look like? Are you going to keep every single piece of paper you have and you just want to put it in a more organized way? Are you ready to let go of some more of that stuff? Can we put this in a different way that's going to serve you better? And so that's kind of what we came down to is, for this specific project, I was kind of suggesting like, let's focus on like categorizing these things a little bit differently and see if that will help. I just had to keep reminding her, and I wanted to empower her with this sense of like, you don't have to get rid of anything.
It's like we're the little kids what you want to keep the toy store with our parents, and we're begging for toys.
There is a sense of empowerment with that. It's when it's like, it's up to you to decide what works for you. And that could be for anything.
We're trying to go through and we're like, okay, I know I'm not going to get that toy. Maybe I'll ask for that toy, but I'm willing to settle for less because
laundry
I really
system
think that
is,
maybe
or
I
how
can
you delineate the task between like what your partner or roommate does and what you do. It could be how you do your schoolwork,
and then you'd be constantly
how you
kind of having
drive home from work. Like
downgrading the toy.
Literally, our entire life is a series of systems, and we do things and we've created things to be in a way that has worked for us and supported us. And I think where we run into some accidental trouble sometimes is when we don't take a moment to evolve the system, or just to even consider, does this system still work for us? Because that's the problem that I've identified in my own life, is that I've built up my own systems that do work for me, and then all of a sudden systems aren't working, and instead I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have done this better. I should have been eating less this whole time. Like, I've gained too much weight, so I must have done something wrong. Well, that's just plainly not true. I have gained weight. I am where I'm at in my body right now. And I have been doing my absolute best to get by, because I've been under a significant amount of stress, and there's a lot of food stuff happening in my life, and there's a lot of exercise stuff happening in my life. And there are things that I can actually point to that have said, this is how I got to where I am. Does that mean I have to just keep blindly going down that road? No. It means that I can take a look at the reality of what is right now, and I get to decide what system is going to work for me right now. And the last piece I'll share on this idea and this emphatic sense of like permission to evaluate the systems in your life and change them to work for yourself is as a business owner specifically. There have been so many times in my business where people have said, this is what you have to do. You have to be ranking on Google, or you need to get all of your stuff on Instagram. You need to be like this. You need to get a bunch of followers, or you need to get on TikTok. You need to go viral. It's like, whoa. There are a lot of ways to grow a business. There are people out there who are running businesses right now that don't even have websites. I don't recommend that, but it's happening out there. There are people who have successfully grown their business only through social media channels. There are people who have successful side hustles that are on like teacher pay teachers, and that are putting their work out that way. There are a million ways to be successful and to grow your business. And the number one way that you can be successful in your business and in your life is by understanding what's going to work for you. For me, like right now, I'm trying to get more traction onto like my blog and more awareness about like the podcast and things like that. And one of the ways that I've tried to do that is through Pinterest, and creating different graphics and directing that traffic back to my site and my podcast and everything. And even then, there's so much like, well, you should do this and you should do that and you have to do these and that. And I had to ask myself, like, what is sustainable? That's probably the first question that I ask myself when I'm reconsidering a system. What is sustainable? And along those same lines, like not only what is sustainable, but what is realistic? And I'm going to tell this story about my mom over the weekend. Like we started going through all these papers, and I could see the relief starting to come into her body, right? And just like, oh, this is going to be so good. Even when it got a little hard, because, it always gets a little hard. Like, okay, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. This is going to be so good. And I could tell she was getting excited. And she said to me, she's like, I am going to be so good. If I get a piece of paper in my hand, I'm going to know exactly where it goes, and I'm going to put it right there, right then. And well, I love that. And could that work? Maybe. But, you know, those little like realistic like sensors start going off in my head, and I'm like, we all know what it is like when we've got 10 other things going on, and then a bill comes in the mail or a receipt on something or something important that we need to keep. And we're like, ugh, I don't actually have time to do that right now. I don't have time to, or something comes where it's going to make you have to reorganize a certain file. You don't have time to do that right away. Like who has the bandwidth for that on a regular day-to-day basis? Maybe you do. I usually don't, which is why my system is to have a catch-all place that I can go through when I can, and when I have the bandwidth to reorganize things or reassess things or clear things out, right? Like it kind of needs a constant little eye on it, and not constant as in every day or every time you get a piece of paper, but in the, you know, zoom out view of your life, like once or twice a year. At least that's a system that works for me. And so, you know, that's my own thing that I mentioned to her. I'm just like, yeah, you could do that. Or maybe we could find a place where you could just put things that you can go through throughout the week or throughout the month. And that's probably more realistic. So what is sustainable and what is realistic? And I think that these things help. And, you know, all of this kind of leads into my final point, which is if you're listening to this, if you're resonating with this, there's probably a piece of you too that is way too hard on yourself. Because I tell you what, the amount of times I've heard my mom beat herself up about the organization in her room, I mean, I would have a lot of money if I was paid for each time she said that. And it's something that I've felt myself. I do it to myself. I should be more organized. I mean, like right now, I record this in my closet, and over the past couple of years we've lived here, I've saved the boxes of like, you know, important stuff that we purchase or whatever. I mean, a lot of it is Dave's stuff. Like right now, I've got like one of his like video game like boxes right here, right next to me. And I don't want it there. Or have stuff for like the business. Like I've got my 85 millimeter like box right here. And I want all of the boxes up where I don't see them. And now they're starting to spill down. And it's things like that where I'm like, I should have more of this organized. I should have gone through all of these things already. Obviously, that's not something I'm hugely beating myself up over. But every time I walk into that closet, I have that voice that goes off in my head. And I think that that's just one example of the hundreds of times throughout the day that I find myself saying that I am doing something wrong because I should have done something different, or I should be doing something different, or I should make a different choice, or I do things just out of like having to do them. In fact, I told my therapist last week, I said, I think one of the most important things for me is that when I do self-care, I want it to be something that I want to do. I don't want it to be something that I have to do for myself. You know, like the difference between being like, I want to go do yoga right now, or I have to go get a yoga practice in, right? There's a difference there. And when too many of our items in our week become haves, I mean, aren't we just setting ourselves up for so much opportunity to beat up on ourselves and to be super hard on ourselves? And to move through life as like we're our own drill sergeant instead of our own biggest fan and our own biggest encourager and our own biggest friend, encouraging us to do all of the things that we want to do. And of course, you have to know what you want to do in order to do those things. And I think for me, in my own experience, like I spend way too much of my life doing the things so that I'm not so hard on myself, right? Like, oh, I need to clean the house perfectly, and I need to be more organized, and I need to get rid of stuff. And I mean, you could probably think of your own things. Like, what are the things in your head that you are just constantly like checking on yourself for? And are those things that are like really important for your self-development? It's not like, for me, I could think of things that I actually wish I did more that would be better for me. Like, reading more. Like I listen to a lot of audiobooks, but I wish that I actually like read a book in my hands more. Or moving my body, definitely like moving my body, like going on walks or doing yoga or whatever, just being more in my body. That's something that it's kind of that one's a more tricky one, because there's almost always a time in my head where I'm like, I have to move more. I have to fill a certain quota a day of each movement. And let me tell you, I fall short of that all the time. Sometimes, especially recently, I feel like I've been doing the bare minimum, and then I just beat myself up on that. And then I don't do the movement that I want to do, or that would actually serve me or make me feel more elevated, happier, less like stiffness in my back, less tension in my neck and shoulders. That's how I want to feel. And so when I started thinking about how I want to feel, it makes me more motivated to do it in a way that I want to do, as opposed to the way that I have to do it. So I think both of these things kind of tie in together. And all of this is just to say that I think we all have opportunities to be much kinder with ourselves, especially as we explore what's not working in our lives, what we want to be different, and what we want to put our energy towards creating change in, right? So I think that's it for today. Of course, we will take a moment to close today's episode with a card drawing. Right now, I have the Love and Relationships Affirmators deck. So let's just give the cards a shuffle here. No scorekeeping. I cut ties with past conflicts and make my personal life a clean, shiny slate. Beginning this moment, everything is new. When an old grievance repeats itself in my head, I introduce it to my new head tenets: tolerance and equanimity. It always is perfect. That's awesome. Because, it's like that with the things in our lives and how like I was talking about, like we build these systems because they work for us. They've worked for us, and then things change and maybe they don't work for us anymore. And, instead of constantly bringing up essentially like old games in our life where things went a different way, or how things used to be, let's just cut ties with that. Let's not keep score. Let's let things keep evolving. Let's be more kind to ourselves through the process. I love that. All right. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Of course, you can continue with me on other platforms. I am on Patreon. You can listen to this podcast ad-free on Patreon. You can also get the lunar guide or self-care guide that I was talking about delivered right to your inbox with our lowest level of membership. It's $3 a month to get that. And there's other levels too that include like the guided meditations, yoga classes, live yoga classes, all kind of fun stuff like that. But you can also keep up with me on TikTok. Every day I'm there just sharing different kind of self-care tips or advice or things that could just keep you encouraged. And then of course you can also check out our website, abitfromwithin.com, where I've got new blogs coming out each week, and just different things that just can help you stay inspired, kind to yourself. And if I could have you take away one thing, it's just to be gentle with yourself. Like, life can be hard enough. We might as well be gentle with ourselves. So keep that in mind. Thanks for tuning in. Feel free to share this with a friend. And until next time.